According to officials and military experts, around 24 people were killed by a nerve agent. Most likely they thought it was sarin. Sarin gas has in fact been classified as an outlawed weapon of mass destruction since the early 1990s. Of course, in one of the most notorious cases of its use, you may recall back in 1988, around 5,000 people were killed when an ethnic Kurd city in northern Iraq was bombarded by cluster bombs. Again, they think it was loaded with sarin. And the highly toxic compound was also used in a terrorist attack in Tokyo in the mid-1990s. Members of a Japanese sect released the gas on several lines of the city's subways there, caused a huge amount of panic, killed 13. Political analyst Rula Taj believes chemical weapons in the hands of al-Qaeda-linked militia in Syria could spell region-wide disaster.
The consequences are going to be dramatic in the region, dramatic for all parties engaged in the conflict. It is also going to be very decisive for the opposition's future. I think nowadays the opposition is no longer in the hands of those we see on TV or attending meetings for Syria. The reality on the ground, whether it's in Syria or in some parts of Lebanon, Jabhat al-Nusra and al-Qaeda are actively present and will dictate the future of the region and the future of this cold revolution.
And another strand to the story, the EU Council has now given the final go-ahead to a new set of sanctions against Syria, which will come into force on Saturday. The bans no longer include that arms embargo, which paves the way, therefore, for European states to supply the Syrian rebels with potentially lethal arms. RT's Igor Piskunov takes a look now at the Syrian opposition and those who might be armed on its behalf.
Since Britain and France blocked attempts to extend the EU embargo on supplying arms to the Syrian rebels, there have been growing fears that the weapons could end up in the wrong hands. And this is why. The Syrian opposition is made up of many divided and often competing factions, and currently there's no force that can represent it as a whole. There's the Syrian National Council, the National Coalition for Syrian Revolutionary and Opposition Forces, the Supreme Military Council, the Free Syrian Army, the National Coordination Committee, the Jabhat al-Nusra, the Farouk Brigade, and many more. And I'd like to point out that only the NCC says it's open to dialogue with the authorities, while all the others have officially proclaimed their goal is to topple the regime. The only difference being how extreme their approaches are.